Hi, good morning. It's a brand new day. I just woke up a few hours ago. Last night I just finished reading Simon, and now I'm going to move on with The Boat Diet Den by Adam Silvera with my custom bookmark. So like I've said in the last video, we're gonna continue this book reading vlog. I'm going to give my thoughts afterwards for every part of the book because this particular book, TB Date, is actually divided into parts. So it's easier for me that way to evaluate and also talk about what's going on and what's happening in the book. And just like what I did with Simon, I'm gonna read alongside an audiobook. It would enhance my experience, like I've said, would be a lot more immersive, and I get to hear what the characters would sound like if they're being read to me. But what's different about the audiobook in They Both Died Then is that it's read by 3 different people. It's quite jarring. I hope that it will be better for me as I'm going along with this book. Probably I'm going to finish it this day and then progressing into night. After that, I'm going to give my honest review. Let's get started.
It doesn't matter if we keep our heads low when passing a gang in a bad neighborhood. No matter how we choose to live, we both die at the end.
Hey you guys, I'm back for an update. So, I've just finished reading part 1 of TB Date. All I can say about it is, here we start to get introduced to the characters, Rufus and Mateo. Actually, they are told in their different perspectives and not into chapters like you would expect in normal books. And also that in every chapter there's a timestamp that they follow because this story actually takes place in just one day, not in a matter of weeks, but in a matter of minutes. The story starts off with Mateo. He's getting a call from Deathcast. They're telling him that he's going to die today. What happens there is that he's obviously very shaken up and scared of what's going to happen to him. And as you read along the chapter, you get to know why that he's scared. He's actually very paranoid. He's alone in his apartment. That concludes Mateo's first chapter. And then next is Rufus's chapter, which happens a little over an hour after Mateo gets his alert. Actually, he's not alone during this time. He's actually beating someone up. So yeah, he's a little bit violent. But anyways, he was in the middle of beating someone up, his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. That's when he got the call. There we get to see what kind of first impression we get from Rufus. He's violent, he's a bit reckless, but then again, we can't say for sure if that's really who he is because it's only his first chapter. So we don't have to be like judgmental about him because at first time meeting him, he's beating someone up. And during the course of the first part, a lot has happened. For example, Mateo has his own internal problems that he wants to deal with. His father is in the hospital and he wants to go see him, and also his best friend also has a daughter, so he's actually conflicting with himself. He wants to go out into the world where he knows he might die of any sort of cause and know that he is very much healthy, so any chances of him being involved in an accident or being involved in a homicide might actually happen for him. That's the scary part. As for Rufus's storyline, what happens there is that he goes home, his foster home to be exact. His 2 friends, their names are Tego and Malcolm, try to ride it out and celebrate Rufus's funeral. When they get there, the guy that he beat up actually shows up there along with Rufus's ex-girlfriend. Well, as you can expect, a lot of anger and resentment. It's just a lot of tension is rising up in the home. Everything goes along, the funeral goes along smoothly. Everyone says their goodbyes even though it hasn't actually happened yet. They wanted to say it before he dies, and it's actually a very incredible opportunity to say goodbye to someone when they're still alive and they can still hear you say goodbye to them. But then the worst thing happens. Remember that guy that Rufus beat up? His name is Peck. He called the cops on Rufus for, obviously because he committed assault, but Then again, the guy is dying. Why would you even do that? That's like the worst thing you can probably do to someone on their death day. I just don't get it. So what happens next is that Rufus is running around the city on his bike, completely alone, and very much terrified because it's his last day. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him if he's gonna be involved in a vehicular accident or whatever. But it's definitely a lot more worse if he spends his last day in a prison cell. After running around, Rufus takes a break in a gas station, and then on a far wall, he sees a graffiti of some kind. That's when he saw the Last Friend app painted on that wall. And he contemplates this if he wants to connect with someone on his last day. Really, no one wants to spend their last day alone without someone by their side. Then he decides to do so. He installs the app. That's when this story all starts. Before this, Mateo is actually already on the Last Friend app. He tries his luck trying to communicate and chat with other people who are dying on the same day as him or not. He gets a lot of bad people. After almost giving up, he finds Rufus. They start chatting up. They get a really good vibe from each other. Well, not exactly. Mateo is kind of skeptical of Rufus's intentions. After that, they decide to meet up at Mateo's apartment and then try to get him out of the apartment, try to see his dad, see his best friend. Then that's the end of the first part. I'm going to read some more, and after that, I'm gonna give my thoughts. It's probably gonna be a very long part 2 based on the markings that I have here. I'll try to summarize it in a way that you guys might understand. Here, it's very thick. And I can tell which parts are which because they're divided by black pages. I love the black pages. I'll keep you guys updated and see you later. So here's a quick update. Me and my family are gonna go out to eat and I'm gonna take a break from reading. Afterwards, we're gonna go back here and I'm gonna resume the reading. I'm still not finished with part 2, but I am going to soon. I'm gonna get ready, so see you guys later.
It's okay that there's a blank right now. I know what it will say, and I know I'll make sure I've lived as I'm claiming. He lived for everyone. The words will wear away over time, but they'll have been true. Rufus wheels his bike along the wet and muddy path, leaving tire tracks. I follow him, my insides feeling heavier with every footstep away from my mother and my open grave, knowing I'll be back soon enough. You sold me on fate, Rufus says. Finish telling me about your afterlife. I do.
Hey you guys, I'm back after a while. I just finished part 2 of They Both Die at the End. It was a really long part. It took almost half of the book itself. I wrote a lot of notes while I was reading. Here are my thoughts about it. So part 2. One thing to note about Mateo and Rufus's chapters is that they have different voices, not literally, but the way they were written shows that they have truly different personalities. In part 2, Rufus and Mateo start to hang out a little and get to know much about each other, but Mateo still doesn't know what happened to Rufus during his funeral. That's only because Rufus didn't actually tell him what happened exactly. It's a little jarring. They had a little confrontation afterwards, but it worked out because they both knew they don't have much time left, so that time they have left shouldn't be spent on arguing with each other because they are both all they have. One of the priorities that Mateo wants to do before his last day ends is that he wants to visit his dad in the hospital. That's because his father is actually in a coma. This scene is very heartbreaking to read and listen because his dad didn't hear him say goodbye. Next up was Mateo wants to say goodbye to his best friend who has a daughter. Her name is Lydia. and the daughter's name is Penny. He visits the apartment. They talk for a bit, but Mateo didn't want to tell her that he was going to die today because he was trying to spare her feelings. That's only because another death actually happened way before, like maybe a year before, and that was his boyfriend and also the father of Penny. So he didn't want to add on to the burden that Lydia has. Out of all the things that Mateo has done, Rufus has been very supportive of his decisions. It's becoming kind of one-sided. At this point, as the story will progress, we will see that the dynamic of the two of them will develop. Friendship will grow out of this. Also other chapters in part 2 that aren't really about Mateo and Rufus. There are other people too, but they aren't written in first person, which is a very different approach to telling their story, which kind of makes sense because those other characters aren't the main characters of the story. It was a very different kind of, wouldn't say experience, but a different kind of take on storytelling. Some of the characters that were included in this story, especially the chapters that were dedicated to them, aren't relevant, but some others were relevant, but then again, it would have been better off if they weren't included in the first place. So after everything has been dealt with, Mateo has already said his goodbyes. That's when Mateo also finds out what Rufus has done. They start to talk things out. Mateo is afraid of Rufus. He just beat up someone because he was full of emotions and rage towards his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. Understandably, he is very afraid of Rufus because he can get violent at times. But I believe that it's not his entire being that's violent. Only some parts of him are. After that, Mateo then decides to go to the cemetery with Rufus, which, if you think about it, it's kind of a wild idea. Then again, Mateo wants to visit his mother's grave and say hello. It's pretty morbid. Mateo wants to visit his mother's grave on his last day. She died giving birth to Mateo, so it's kind of like a parallel thing almost. Very kind of poetic. Walking along the cemetery, he also happens to see his headstone. Obviously, and understandably, he was mortified seeing that. He kind of lost all hope and made him be reminded today was going to be the last day he was ever going to live. But after a moment, what happens next is that he lies inside the grave. Actually, it wasn't finished. He did that. He actually did that. And Rufus lies next to him. They talk for a bit. After a few moments, they get up and get ready to set off again. So now I'm going to start reading part 3 of They Both Die at the End. We're actually almost done. Like I've said earlier in the video, this book is gonna be finished today. I don't know if it's coincidence, but this can be read in like a day, which is pretty cool, I guess. I kind of wanted it to be longer, but then again, following the theme of this book, they only have a day left, so it's understandable that this book should also be read in a day's length. I'm gonna give my updates later after reading this.
Patrick Heck, Gavin. 5:05 p.m. Got it, Heck says, hopping off his bed. Clint's graveyard. He puts the loaded gun in his backpack. We gotta be fast. Let's go.
Hey you guys, I just finished reading part 3. Something very bad is going to happen. I know something will happen since I've already read this book before. But anyways, I'm just gonna give my thoughts on what's happened in part 3. So in part 3 of They Both Die at the End, the relationship between Rufus and Mateo begins to deepen. Rufus was sharing his story of what really happened to his family. Mateo left him alone for a little while to cry and grieve for himself because he's never given himself the chance to do it, even after a long time when Rufus's family died. This is also the part of the book when the friendship begins to improve in a way and they begin to support each other and it's no longer one-sided like before. 4 is also called the end of the book. We're going to see what's going to go down. Something bad is going to happen.
"10:36 p.m. The hourglass is almost out of sand. It's getting creepy. I'm picturing death stalking me, hiding behind cars and bushes, ready to swing his damn scythe.
I'm mad tired, not just physically, but straight emotionally drained. It's just how I felt after losing my family. Full force grief I have no chance pulling myself out of without time, which we know I don't have. I'm making my way back to Althea Park to wait this night out, no matter how normal that is for me. I can't get myself to stop shaking because I can be alert as all hell right now, and it won't change what's going down mad soon. I also miss my family and that Mateo kid so much. And yo, there better be an afterlife, and Mateo better make it easy to find him like he promised. Wonder if Mateo found his mother yet. Wonder if he told her about me. If I find my family first, we'll have our hug it out moment, and then I'll recruit them in my Mateo manhunt. And who knows what comes next. I throw on my headphones and watch the video of Mateo singing to me. I see Althea Park in the distance, my place of great change. I return my attention to the video, his voice blasting in my ears. I cross the street without an arm to hold me back.
So I finished reading all of it. I have to say, even though I know what happens every single time, it just doesn't make it easier for me to process what I've read. It's never a good feeling. It was almost too much. But anyways, I'm going to read off a few notes that I've written. We'll start with our full book review after I've given my thoughts on part 4. So part 4 starts off with Mateo and Rufus. They are hanging out at Clint's graveyard. It is a bar that serves deckers for people who got their death cast called. They are joined by Lydia, Malcolm, Tego, and Rufus's ex-girlfriend, Amy. Inside, people are singing and dancing, laughing and crying. It's all such a beautiful scene to read about. And of course, seeing that it's their last day, they want to spend it spectacularly. So they sing American Pie, and it's also overwhelming but perfect. Good things happened that night. They got to dancing, they laughed a lot, cried. Something happened in the bar that Heck, the one that Rufus beat up on part 1 of the book. Well, he's back and he brought his friends and he was holding a gun. Understandably, what happened there at the bar is that people were screaming and running for their lives. This confrontation that happens between the characters is very much high in tension. Anything could happen at any moment, but the unexpected happens, and it's kind of a cool thing that happened when Peck didn't expect anything from Rufus, that he was going to fight back. Suddenly, Mateo clocks him straight on the head. The gun skids right across the floor. After that, they scared Peck off and they ran out of the bar, leaving their friends behind. This might be criminal for me to do, but I will actually spare you the details of what's happened towards the ending of the book. You guys will have an open interpretation of what's going to happen. I'm not going to judge you or I'm not going to correct you. I'm just gonna leave you at that. And also, if you guys really do want to know what's gonna happen at the end, I recommend picking up They Both Die at the End. Or maybe listen to the audiobook because it's just as good. So we're gonna move on towards the book review itself. Like I did the last video, we're gonna divide them into 4 categories that I've decided. The first thing that I want to talk about is the characters in the book. Since this book was written in first person, it's a lot more personal because every chapter is, well, not exactly chapter, but every POV or point of view is alternating between the characters. And I'm going to start off with Rufus's character. From our first impression of Rufus, he is a violent person. He acts out, but we don't know what's the reasoning behind all those bad actions that he's done. Throughout this book, we get to see his kind of like character development. It's all because he knew all along that he had it inside himself, but also Mateo helped bring it out, the good side that he has. What I can say about Rufus Emeterio is that he's rash, brutish, a bad mouth, but very passionate, and can also be loving, kind, and vulnerable. Now, moving on to Mateo, our first impression of him is that he's kind of like a hermit. You might also probably think that he has agoraphobia. He is afraid of going out. Not just that he's dying today, but he's just like that in general. He's very much pure, he's quiet, paranoid, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have that fire within himself. And I love that this book allowed us to see the different parts of the characters. because they bring it out of each other, support each other, and care very much deeply for each other. As for the other characters in the book, I won't be talking about them all too much because they're actually not essential. I guess what I meant to say was they're not actually the center of the story. Although the events that have occurred in this story involves them, they don't actually drive the story forward, but they bring a lot more plot lines and drama. They just help into building up the characters of Rufus and Mateo. As for the setting, it takes place in New York City. Most of the time, this story takes place in Brooklyn. The author himself is actually a New Yorker, so he knows his way around the city. That's why the book is also well described, and it makes me feel like I'm there with the characters. It really does help that you are familiar with the place, and I love that. As for the plot of this story, it was good that it centered around two characters because too many of them would have been not exactly like bad, but probably disorganized in a way that the readers wouldn't be able to keep up with what's happening. But one thing that bothered me about this story is that we don't know the backstory of Deathcast and how they are able to tell people that they're going to die today. Why is it that they're able to predict that who's going to die that day? But then again, I think this was the intention of the author to not to give too much background because it would stray away from the main point, which is story between these two boys that share a long time friendship with each other, even though that it's only gonna last one day. So I guess Deathcast is actually just one of the many plot lines that the author uses in order to make this story. To be honest, I'm quite okay with that. I'm very much okay with that. As this book is centered around death, there are many analogies, metaphors when it comes to death and that are being applied in this book. It's entirely up to the reader of what they want to believe. In the case of the scenes that have happened in this book, they are all very much purposeful. Although some of the point of views could have been omitted because some of them weren't really contributing to the story itself. They kind of had their own storyline, which is also good because it wouldn't be complete otherwise, or that the story would become too boring, I guess. It's only centered around Rufus and Mateo's storyline. The book itself, it's very good. It made me cry the first time I read it, and I would never forget that feeling. Well, this concludes our book vlogs for Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, and they both die at the end. If you guys want to read these books, I very much highly recommend them. They are, I wouldn't say a literary masterpiece, but they're enough to keep you happy. Simon is a happy book, and TB Date is a sad book, so hooray for me! I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video vlog that I made. It's my first time, so forgive me if I'm such a noob at this stuff, but all I know is that I'm enjoying myself, and you guys should too. Do the things that make you happy. That's all the advice that I'm going to give tonight. It's already 10 o'clock where I am. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and you would look forward to it. Bye.